Ironside will not be seen tonight, so we may bring you the following special program.
Please support the Word Balloon podcast by going to patreon.com/wordballoon. Become a part of the League of Word Balloon listeners. That's patreon.com/wordballoon. Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress with you. Always happy to welcome Scott Snyder back to Word Balloon. Good to see you, man.
Oh, it's great to see you, John. Thanks for having me, man. I always look forward to talking to you.
No, I feel the same way, man, and you're killing it. I honestly, Scott, I didn't know what to expect from the Absolute books. Everybody so far is really doing a great job. Yourself, Jason Aaron, Kelly Thompson. Had the opportunity to read Jeff Lemire's Absolute Flash. Really, really great stuff. So really, I'm so glad things are going as well as they are right now.
Oh yeah, I'm so proud to be a part of this line. I mean, everybody is really bringing it, and Absolute Martian Manhunter with Dennis Camp and Javi Rodriguez, and then this coming Monday is final order for our last book that we have scheduled right now, Absolute Green Lantern by the amazing Ella Ewing and Janoy Lindsay. So again, like, I can't thank people enough. We never expected these kind of sales at all. I mean, especially on Absolute Batman, but to see Absolute Flash hit, over 170, to see Martian Manhunter hit, over 120, all these numbers are just, I mean, we're all just floored. We're still adjusting to it, that it's even happening. So we can't thank fans enough. And to see Absolute Batman, still at number 1, 5 issues in, it's just like, again, I haven't even processed it yet, or it would freak me out. I'm just trying to focus on the story with Nick.
Well, before we get into the specifics of Absolute Batman and how much we can talk about over 5 issues, but take me to the beginning of the Absolute universe. Was this something, as you rested from DC, where, was this your pitch to them? Like, how did your involvement coming back into this specifically? How did that all happen?
Yeah, it's funny because when I left DC in 2020, I had this kind of I had this end game in mind where I said I'd stay about 10 years. As it got closer to 7 or 8 years, I was like, I have to leave at 10. Mostly, I mean, because I had all of these creator-owned ideas that I wanted to do, and every year I kept signing exclusives, and every time I signed one, I would really fight to get a carve out to be able to do independent work outside of DC, and they were kind and would give it to me, and then I had no time to do them, so I wound up fighting for a carve out I never used in any of these contracts after about 2013 with Witches. So I was just like, I have to go, and I always am trying to be as transparent as possible with you and with fans. And it was also a really chaotic time at DC where they were adjusting to new ownership, and there were cuts coming, and there was just a lot of stress. And so it just felt like, what, this is a good time to leave. I've done all the stuff with Greg that we had ever hoped to do. Death Metal was a real statement for us on what we felt comics should be. It was all about how every story you ever cared about matters, and everything is in continuity. And anyway, and so when I left, I was very much like, I can finally sort of go do some creator own. And while I was away, it gave me the opportunity to really enjoy superhero comics, where I felt like I could read them without the pressure of being invested, as a someone writing them. And I'm very close with James Tynion and Josh Williamson. And Josh was really helming DC at that time after James and I kind of went to do our own stuff. And I had this ongoing conversation with Josh about how many good books were being published during those years at both Marvel and DC. from Immortal Hulk and Venom, and the great books at Marvel, to World's Finest and Nightwing, and just terrific books over at DC. And yet there was this kind of broader cultural conversation going on because of the ending of this kind of first cycle of movies, both at DC and Marvel, that superheroes in general as a concept were played out. They were tired. They were over. It was, this malaise. Even the Wall Street Journal did like an autopsy, and so did the Times actually on their podcast. They all did these kind of end of superhero era stuff. And it just gave me this feeling with Josh. We started talking about, you know what? We really felt like what was missing was the kind of old school big initiative that we had gotten to be a part of with the New 52 and then Rebirth. Not just an event, but a moment when the company comes together to make a bold statement about all the different kinds of things they stand for at once in superheroes. And with the New 52, it was very much about reinvention, bold new directions, rebuilding the characters from the ground up to be exciting in new ways. And with Rebirth, it had this kind of almost the opposite sensibility, which is another great sort of tenet of comics, which is going back to legacy, reminding ourselves of history, trying to tell epic stories within established, 100-year-old continuity. And part of the chaos at DC, I think, during the 10 years that I was there before I left, was there was a constant push and pull between those poles. And it always felt like somebody was pulling it one way or the other way. And a lot of us, me absolutely in there, felt that it would have benefited us to just do both at the same time, where you can show that you can be reinventive and bold and radical, and you can also kind of respect and honor continuity in different ways. And so Josh and I were like, let's do something like that if DC will let us. Let's go to Marie and Jim Lee and Marie Javins there, and DePease, and say, look, they had been talking to me about coming back by 2022 or so, but doing something. And Marvel was really nice too. Marvel, I had some talks with them about possibly going over there to do characters. And what I really realized was like, I just didn't feel like doing a character or a book. I felt like I wanted to be a part of something bigger than that, and to be able to do something that, as corny as it sounds, we could go to sleep at night feeling like we did something that showed people across the board that superhero comics are not only alive and well, but telling some of their best stories right now, even as this whole, kind of mainstream media was talking about superheroes being done. And so we went to DC. I went to them before. It was like Comic-Con of 2022, where we had our first big summit meeting about it. And Josh and I pitched All In, this idea that what if we did this big old school initiative where the main line, we'd have a meta story, 3 parts. We'd have a meta story about Darkseid that would sort of represent the thesis of the whole thing. Darkseid realizes that he can become something far greater than he's ever been. He's sort of like the greatest troll ever, where he becomes the ender of all things, the ultimate omega, and he believes deeply that it's his role no longer to get the anti-life equation or to control life, but instead to end all stories, to end all superheroes. They never should have existed. He's going to erase them, and he's going to come as this like Galactus level threat beyond what Darkseid has been for a while. And the heroes have to, band together and embrace things that are new and scary, and go back to their history and legacy to beat him. That's the thesis of the entire meta story that's running over the course of these 3 to 4 years. Really 3 years. It started in 24. The end of 25, we'll have another big beat of it, which I'm involved in. And then we'll do another big one in 26, 27 that kind of gets where it culminates. Spoilers, but that's the plan. I don't know if that's too out there to say, but it is. That's the plan. And so the idea is Josh and I would architect some of this. And for this first beat, for All In, the focus was on showing this complete elasticity of superhero storytelling, where everything would be a jumping on point, but we'd create a new universe that said the ethos of which was, look at how exciting and new and different and resonant these characters can feel. And at the same time, we would do jumping on points where we showed how exciting the main line can be and how epic the storytelling can be in conventional superhero continuity. And so that was the idea. And for me, I love Ultimate Universe stuff. I love Absolute Universe stuff. I mean, I love multiverse stuff. So for the exciting thing for me was, all right, like this one is about a world in which these characters are underdogs. Like instead of being majestic and grand, and instead of being aspirational right off the bat, they're a little wild and dangerous, and they're up against greater odds because regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, and like I wear my politics on my sleeve. I'm a big New York City, like third generation, like lefty. But that said, I think everybody across the spectrum feels these are, stressful times, and that it feels like there is a group of very few people that control a lot more than they should. And kids, I think, especially young people, feel like they're coming into an era where the odds are more stacked against them than they were before. And so that's what these heroes should represent. They should be a version of the characters that feels, to me at least, like, they're going to go up against our greatest fears, and that means they have to embody the moment. And so that was the ethos. And and I agreed to be a part of it in 22 to helmet with Josh. And then I said that I'd be responsible for some books in the main line, but mostly the Absolute Universe, and Josh would sort of do the same. And so I started going out to people about the Absolute Universe, and my pitch to them was this pitch I had for Batman, where it was, look, one way you could do it, the idea, so you only have to ask one question, and I can just like go forever.
There's a lot of information you had to go through, Scott. I expected the essay answer. Don't worry about it, man. Keep going.
All right, good. So for me, like the example I gave was, and the sort of prompt to everybody that I talked to was like, take the character you want to use and burn them down to their core. What are they at their absolute simplest configuration? Like, what is all they are? And I said, like, for me, Batman is just a boy who suffered this trauma and uses that trauma as fuel to make sure it never happens again, to make himself like the pinnacle of heroism when it comes to making the world better. So it's about trauma turned into triumph, and that's it. Everything else is malleable. So I said, as an example, for me right now, if I were doing Batman, I think it would be exciting to make him come up with barely anything, come up working class, and have the Joker be the one that has all the money. And ultimately, the thesis of it would be that Batman in this world is more of the chaos, and the villains or Joker is more of the system and order that Batman represents in the main universe. And so I kind of went around pitching this to people, being like, but you do it however you want. Like, that's just my example pitch of how you could do something. And so the first person I went to was Jason Aaron. This was in like the spring of the, like, basically it was 23, I guess the summer of 23. I guess it was the summer of 23, or it was the summer of 22. I don't even remember which year. It was like all the way back then, though. It was a couple of years ago. It might have been the summer of 22, my God. And then I think I agreed to it in 22, and it was the summer, and then we had our summit, yeah, in fall. Someone go look at my Instagram and see. You can see the pictures. I posted them without anyone knowing what we were doing, but when you see us, the first meeting with me and Jason Aaron, and it's like James Tynan was there, Josh in New York, at a conference room in a fancy building. That's when we first met, after we had agreed to do it, and I was already committed to being a part of it. But at that time, I went to Jason to be like, Batman, right? I know you probably want to do Batman. And he was like, actually, I really have this idea for Superman. And he was like, I'd like to do because he was like, the thing I think is vestigial about Superman, as somebody growing up in Kansas, this is Jason, what he said, because he's the first Superman writer to actually grow up in Kansas. Actually, he was saying the ideal kind of farm town isn't something that today you see a lot of. You see a lot of agribusiness, you see a lot of towns relying on other things, but that Smallville feels mythical. So what if it happened on Krypton? What if he grew up with a childhood on Krypton that felt that way? And that's taken away, and he comes here to a Kansas that's much more hostile to him at that moment. And what if Brainiac came here earlier? It was this whole really cool pitch, and it was like, you know what? That sounds amazing. Go for it. And then Kelly signed on to Wonder Woman and had this amazing pitch about Wonder Woman. Instead, the Amazons, instead of them being apart from history, they're the secret heroes of history, and Wonder Woman's raised in hell. And I was like, this is magic, literally and figuratively. And then I went to a few people for Batman. I went to some big names, and the scheduling and family obligations and stuff just didn't work out. And DC was really pressuring me because they were like, you got to find somebody, or because I was obligated to take a book. But when I thought the books were going to be filled, I was talking about doing a Detective Chimp book. I was talking about doing a Darkseid book. I wanted to do something like, I didn't want to be the star of it. I was like, I just want to be to the side and do something peripheral and let everybody else kind of do the biggest stuff and just be the organizer and do the all in special with Josh and do the meta story or plan the meta story that would have these touch points over the 3 years. And then really what happened was James Tynion called me up and he was like, I have somebody. Remember, because now it was winter. I was out in the yard right outside here in the snow because I didn't want to wake up the kids. And I'm like, I'm waiting for my office to heat up. And I'm like, yeah, do you have somebody to do it? And he's like, yeah, man, you should do it. And I was like, oh, dude, shut up. And he was like, no, think about it. You've been pitching this same book to everybody for a year. Like, you need to just write it. You're telling everybody to go out there and take the biggest swing and try and be fearless. And, he was right. The thing I was scaredest of or most scared of was to go back to Batman. It was the one thing I really felt like, God, I could really screw up my legacy if I have one. Was what if I go back and I do a terrible job? What if I go back and nobody wants it? What if I go back and it's just not? I'm just the calculus of what I'm trying to do is just completely off. And he was like, "Well, who would you use for it? Who'd you want to be your co-creator on it?" And I was like, Nick was the first person I mentioned. I was like, Nick Dragotta, I think. Yeah, he's like, you already thought about the art, And I'm like, I did. Yeah, I mean, it was this idea of having somebody that's so gritty and grounded and has this Mazzucchelli influence, and at the same time has this manga element to it where it's kinetic and elastic and speed lines and multi-panel stuff and really storytelling forward. And so it just felt young at the same time. And it was like, and so he's like, ask Nick and see what Nick says. So I called Nick. I didn't know Nick hardly at all. I'd only spoken to him a couple times over the Creators for Creators project at Image, which is a great program that he founded with East of West. And I was just walking around my neighborhood and I was like, look, I know this is crazy, but we're doing this stuff at DC. And I kind of told him the idea. And he's like, hold up, bro. He's like, are you telling me you're asking me to do the Batman one with you? And I was like, well, I was thinking of it. And he was like, let's rock. I'm in. Let's do it. And I was like, I guess I'm doing this. And I remember feeling this elation and also complete panic. And I went to DC and I was like, all right, I'll do the Batman one, and we had a lot of time to plan it. And that was the most fun thing. Nick, he lives right across the sound from me. He lives in Connecticut and I'm in New York. And so he takes the ferry over and we go to my studio and go in person. And we meet every couple of weeks and spend a day doing it. And it's the most sort of just like collaborative way I've ever built a comic. I love it because we just put stuff up on the wall and it just has a real magic to it. I mean, this book is really special to me and to him. And again, like once we were making it, DC was so supportive. There was a lot of moments I thought they'd say no. The only thing I said to them was I would only do it if they allowed the I didn't want to push back on the pitch, like meaning I wanted it to be Batman comes up working class and Joker is this billionaire. And this is all before Elon, by the way. This is like crazy back in 2020, 3. And it was weird because it's like real life out comic booked our comic book entirely. This is back when Elon was like apolitical and it was more about just, again, billionaires and all this. And then all of a sudden here we are. But the premise they had to stick to, like, because that was what was pitched. And the other really important thing to me as a dad was that Bruce is formed in a mass shooting. And Jim didn't even blink. Jim was like, look, if you feel that strongly about it, he's a dad too. And it felt like if Batman is formed by a trauma that's supposed to be the worst trauma a kid can face, in the 1930s, maybe that was like a mugger in an alley because, you're afraid of labor and people with, and the muggy, this whole thing. Different sort of paranoias back then and anxieties. But today, that's the anxiety my kids have and what I have for them. And my 5-year-old goes to a kindergarten where they have an escape window, and it's right there when you walk in, you see it. And that it just felt important. And Jim and Marie were very supportive. And we had an alternate title page where it wasn't just this. We wanted a gun in the broad daylight and the title page, just big black 2-page spread. And I had an alternate in case they said no, which was the bat symbol. and they let us do it. And so they've been amazingly supportive of every aspect of it. And it's just been, once we had the book, the first issue, I really didn't care at all if anyone liked it because I loved it so much. Like I read it and I was like, I'm as proud of this as anything I've ever done. If you know, and I just felt so happy with it. It was like, even if this tanks, I'm so proud to be a small part of this and the whole line. And it was great. It was a great feeling. I mean, it was the happiest feeling I've had in superhero comics is the way things are right now at DC. I mean, you know, because it's just such an exciting moment, and people are really collaborating, and there's really this creator forward feeling. And you know, Marie and Jim and them, they've been wonderful to us, sincerely. You know, I don't shill for DC. I've tried to be honest when things are rough, and without throwing anyone under a bus or spilling tea all over the place or whatever, just being like, look, it's tough times, or it's this or it's that. And this has been a great ride since I came back. I love it.
I want to go through some of the beats of the story and also the characters as well, how you're depicting them, because again, and really starting with the catalyst of what creates Bruce and turns Bruce, and that is this tragedy at a zoo. And beyond just the general notion of, a mass shooting and stuff, that is a reality that unfortunately we have to face these days, but also the usually tranquil setting of a zoo, that it is a place that kids go to for joy. And listen, I know the politics about zoos, and I don't even mean to sound condescending when I say that, because no, I get it and stuff, but no, that's where you take the kids to see the animals and really great bonding with the family and stuff. And that's taken away from Bruce. And I love that Gotham is trying to, rebuild the zoo and everything as well. And and also that the zoo obviously is informative too of the bad guys that are in the story, which is
it is. It's thematically, it's meant to be this kind of haunt the whole story. This place where the animals are going wild with violence, in that way, scared and excited and all of it at the same time. And that's the party animals gang, is the kind of giving up in the face of terror and violence, and just joining, as opposed to kind of standing up. And it gave me I wanted it to be somewhere public, and I wanted it to be somewhere, I didn't want it in a school. To me, that was over the line. And I don't know why. I mean, I get, when I think about it, I mean, I can feel it. It just felt like this was a good balance. Like, putting it in a school, for me, I did not want to see kids getting shot. It's not that it's not that isn't implied in this, like that anyone could be shot. It's just a bridge too far in terms of, like, I don't think it's necessary to convey the same thing. But I mean, I understand if people think differently. For me, that was just I wanted to do it without it being excessive in some way. To sort of touch on that fear. And I also thought it's a broader fear, meaning it is a fear for children in particular, but it's a fear for all of us, that we're going to be somewhere public and someone's just going to start shooting. And that idea of it being something that's even more universal when it's in a place for children, but we're all there, like, have access, and you might be there too, just felt appropriate. And they're bats. That's the other thing, was there were bats, like, in the place
Sure.
that I could get to. So yeah.
No, I love it, man. Honestly, in terms of the setting, and also we've seen the Bruce Thomas Wayne relationship. I love how much you're giving us of Martha, and I think that's
thanks.
terrific. And absolutely, man. I mean, she's working with Jim Gordon in the mayor's office in these flashback scenes, and we get them at Martha and Bruce various stages, right after Thomas's death, and just this, really this, you really do feel for them, because we know what's coming, and so I mean, that's the thing, is you really are playing out this tragedy, and it's like you keep giving us more and more of poor Martha trying to reach out to Bruce, and how she understands what he lost and what she lost, but he's beyond connection and everything. And again, the regret I'm sure that Bruce has in the modern day and everything, and looking back at these tragedies. No, it's very interesting. Much. So tell me about the choice of Martha rather than Thomas. in this
I
game.
just felt like there's been so much done with Thomas in different ways. He's been Batman in the Flashpoint universe. He's sort of he haunts the Batman. Yes, Father, I will become a bat. All of it is sort of Thomas based, and it made me just feel like, what about Martha in the way that, to me, if they're working class and they're not this kind of aristocratic family, wouldn't it be interesting if he had his mother and to give him a vulnerability? Because part of it was, I wanted this Bruce to be, the math of creating him was really simple, right? It's like, if you're going to take away, for me, Batman, like I said, at core is a really simple concept, right? And the reason that people love him as triumph over tragedy is because the triumph that he presents is awesome. Like, he is the best, and he is badass, and he has the coolest costume, and he's got the best car. Like, it is this guy who just takes this bad thing and then becomes the most awesome character ever. And a lot of characters, Spider-Man, Daredevil with the Catholic guilt, Spider-Man with the anxiety of, start from a position of doubt, self-doubt, and that's the power of that character, is that they're relatable because they're more fallible. Like Dick Grayson was fun to write because he's that way. He's all compassion. He's worried he's doing the wrong thing sometimes. He's got this bravado and confidence, but Bruce was one of the few heroes who feels like his resting position is like awesomeness. So it's like one of the mistakes that I think writers make, new people and students, when I see them writing a Batman example or a Batman template, is they start with him here, like most characters, where it's like, he's struggling with something right off the bat. He doesn't struggle. He starts thinking he's awesome and he's going to beat all of it. That's why, like, Lego Batman is such a true iteration of him, and it's what people, I think, respond to about him, because he just doesn't doubt at first. He's there and he's awesome. And the reason that connects is because, again, all of us have suffered some traumatic thing in life, and to see the person not only have overcome it to become something great, but to have them be that level of confidence makes them someone you're going to cheer for above everybody else, because there's a certain kind of like, fuck yeah, quality to him that I love about Batman. And so if you're going to take a lot of stuff away from him that speaks to that awesomeness, right? He's not going to have planes and cars and a cave, and you're going to take it away, right? Because how could he have, I don't know how he would have a cave here. He does have a cave, kind of, but it's not like, you know what I mean? He can't have a dinosaur and all this stuff in it and all that. It just doesn't make any sense, like how he would construct that. So if you're going to take it away, then what do you give him that makes him awesome? Well, he's going to be bigger. And that was the thing. It was like, he's going to be bigger. He's going to be scarier. He's going to be slightly more violent, because every part of his suit needs to be a utility. He's going to be a builder. And that was the kind of math of building him, was like, he's bigger, scarier, alien, like almost like you don't know what he's going to do. And then it became, well, what other awesome things can I give him? Well, we'll give him a couple awesome Batmobiles, but what if he's this tough and whatever, he doesn't have a butler and he's not going to be close with Alfred for a while. So who do I have him talk to? And then it was like, what if Martha's alive? Who's Martha? And if you look at the series through this lens constantly of like, he is the underdog, how do you make it hard for him and yet retain his like Batman awesomeness? That's the fun of the series. So Martha became like, well, who is she? Well, what if she and Thomas are just they're really civic minded, good people. They're like old hippies almost, who like believe that change is possible no matter what. And Thomas is a teacher, that felt right. And Martha is a social worker. She started working in Jim's office recently, but she's like a den mother. I was like, I see her as like this kind of den mother too. And then I was like, to who? And then I was like, what if she's like the den mother to these crime alley kids? And what if that's his villains? And I'm like, oh, well, that will be, but now they're all his villains. Maybe they knew him back then, but now, and I was like, that's less interesting though. What if they're his friends now and they're not villains yet? And they're actually part of a, sort of a team almost. And I was like, all right, it's a crazy spin. I don't know if anyone's gonna like seeing them playing poker together, but I like it, so let's go for it. And that's how it developed, was this kind of like giving him vulnerability, giving him a cast that made him feel human, if he's going to be almost inhumanly big and capable and like, and that was the other thing is like the real skeleton key of the whole series is that when I was thinking about Batman himself and writing him ever again, it occurred to me that like when I wrote him the first time around, I wrote him as me facing my fears. So Batman was up against the things I was afraid of: fatherhood and death of the family, the history of the book itself and Court of Owls. Like, but this time around, it's hard for me for a long period of time, not for like one story, but if I was going to do an ongoing, to step back into that because my fears are almost predominantly about my kids at this point, meaning the world. They're about the world they're inheriting. That's my biggest fears, or the world they're facing and how compromised it seems in all kinds of ways. And so I was like, I don't know, I wouldn't be like Batman. I'd be more like Alfred, I'd be like more jaded. And then I was like, well, what if Alfred is the point of view character and Alfred is coming in and instead Batman is this like idealistic 20 something year old who's like Dark Knight sized, but fast and bigger, faster and bigger. And like, and he's inspired by him. And the whole first arc, the emotionality of it really is Alfred. It's Alfred's arc, and that Alfred becomes, sort of taken in with this idea of this kid that's just this force of nature that everybody that tells him you can't make a difference, the kid's like, out of my way. And he's just a bulldozer, and that's the axe on his chest. Just he's going to be shoveled to the face, coming right through. He does not care what you tell him. One of my favorite moments with him is in issue 6. He's beating on the Black Mask at this big ultimate fight they're having. And Black Mask is like, before Bruce hits him, he's like, don't you get it? You think fighting me is going to mean anything? They're just going to bring more down on your head. And I'm laughing at you. And Bruce just interrupts him by ramming him through the wall and then the floor. And they go through a bowling alley where he hits the Black Mask with bowling balls. And then he's like beating on him. And he's like, tell me again that I don't matter. I love it. He's like, and he's like, I fucking love it. And that to me is who he is. He's just, tell me again that I don't matter. It just makes me stronger. And that I had it when I had that in my head. I was like, this is exciting to me because instead of me writing through Bruce, like I'm writing a Bruce that inspires me. I'm Alfred watching and being like, this kid, because that's the way my kids. They look at the world that way right now. I have an 18-year-old. He just turned 18. He just got into college, and I'm really proud. But he does not look at the world and be like, oh, it's all screwed. He looks at it as like, it's totally screwed, but like we're gonna change it. We're gonna make it better. And that kind of, I want to be like, oh, so naive, but then it's like, no, that's the way I was. That's the way you want to be. You want to be that way again and feel that way, and it makes you that way having kids and seeing them that way. So that's really where the book comes from on an emotional level. It's like the heart of it. So all of that is to say Martha plays a really big role in that. She, I wanted to play with the idea. You'll see in the first arc, people are like, if she dies, we riot. So you're going to have to read it to see, but it's definitely a threat. It's a threat that you'll see coming. Like, she's in danger. So you don't know when, you got to read it. But Martha is a character I really love. So I'm very excited about her inclusion.
Well, again, the difference in these relationships in this absolute universe versus what we usually get, and there are always surprises, as you said earlier, that Bruce's crew are the Rogues Gallery, and they're all kids, and they're all like busting each other's chops, and yeah. I love that, and I look forward to issue 6, which is only coming in a couple weeks, but yeah. It's those relationships are really interesting. Selena as much as the guys, but it's really, it's really going to be fun. And that's why I'm, so the fate of Martha is still, I understand that I assume those are flashbacks, and that when we see Bruce and Alfred, Martha's out of the picture and everything, but
you got to see.
All right, fair enough.
I don't want to spoil it, but Martha, okay. Yeah, Martha right now, where we left her in 5, is that she's in a lot of trouble because she's with Jim as all the party animals. The Black Mask has given masks and guns to every corner, or all these corners in the city, and he's like, gives a speech about how rich people and billionaires and politicians, they've carved up the world and it's dead. It's after midnight on the doomsday clock. So, be one of them, be a dead animal at the biggest bacchanal and just enjoy it before it's gone. So if you put on one of the masks, everything gets monetized. So, arson, robbery, whatever, like assault, all of it is different levels of crypto. And it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars for each thing up for grabs. So go get yours quick. And so Martha's right in the center being like, we're going to stop. You shouldn't be taking these. So you'll see. But,
That's
yeah,
insane, by the way, Scott. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because truly combining the Purge with the crypto craze is a really fantastically twisted idea, and that's what I really appreciate about the Absolute line in general. All of you guys so far, and women, because Kelly's doing it crazy too.
Kelly's killing it.
Batshit ideas, man, and no pun intended.
No, that's the idea. Wait till you read Green Lantern. I mean, Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter is amazing. I mean, I think that book will win the Eisner next year, but it's like it's essentially John Jones is a counterterrorism expert with the FBI, and he goes to stop a suicide bombing in a cafe like in the States, and the guy seems really perturbed and blows himself up anyway. And after he heals from the explosion, John realizes that there's an alien presence in his mind telling him things about an invasion that's happening all over the world. And it's a book that's incredibly gripping and thrilling and plot driven, and yet it's so heartfelt. He has a wife, he has an autistic son who he isn't able to really communicate with, and suddenly this alien presence in his mind gives him a different way of reaching out. But all of it's also deeply about the spread of bad ideas versus empathy, and the White Martians versus Green Martians. It's great. It's just great. And it's also, the art is just so invigoratingly different, and Javi is just killing it. So that, and then Al and Janoi on Green Lantern, it's a total reinvention, where I was with Al at Comic-Con when he pitched it a couple years ago, and we were on a balcony, and we were just standing there, and he's like, I told him, I'm like, look, I think you're probably exclusive at Marvel. And he's like, no, I'm not, and I was like, well, look, I mean, I've loved Immortal Hulk, and we're doing this stuff. You can't tell anybody, but do you have a pitch? And he was like, oh, I really would love to do Green Lantern one day. And I was like, well, what's your pitch? And he was like, well, if we're doing this kind of universe, what I would do is I would flip it so that instead of being the ones in power and the space cops, light is the thing that's the outlaw that's fleeing from darkness, because it's rarer and it's more fragile. And so it represents these things, hope and faith and all of this across the universe, and life to persist and progress. But darkness is trying to swallow it up, and different alien species see it differently, hence the different colors, because your eyes work different. And I was like, dude, you've got to do this book. And so it was great. Again, it was just like, all right, and Flash, I mean, Jeff was like, I really want to do something that's a stripped down Wally book, where it's just like no Speed Force, no legacy, no Flashes before him, everything new. And I was like, we need a book like that, because a lot of the Martian Manhunter is, really daring and very just very progressive, and it's like, it's art, it's an incredibly easy book to read and heartfelt and all those things. But it is like also a challenging book. It's a book that hits really hard. Green Lantern is a book with this massive cast and mythology. Everybody you love from Green Lantern, like Hal and Guy, and like everyone's there, right away. And so we needed a book that's like just really stripped down one character, a young character, really accessible, really straightforward, and that was this. So it really worked out. And we tried also very hard to make sure that the books gave very different, almost like the opposite end of the spectrum from what was happening in the main universe. So if Flash was really big and cosmic and embracing a lot of big ideas and legacy, then here we would do it really stripped down. If Wonder Woman in the main universe is, the way Tom is writing her is the sort of most grand version of her, where she's so herself in the best way. Like she's almost like Wonder Woman Prime, where she's like at the height of her powers and confidence and all of the great, it's almost a testament to all the great things about Wonder Woman, that book. then let's do her over here in a way where she's uncertain and dangerous and raw, and you don't know what she quite, that. And so each thing was meant, and Chip was great. Chip restored Batman to having all his money again when in October when we launched our book. So you'd get rich Batman with all the fun gadgets over there, and we would do Batman with nothing. And anyway, so yeah, it's been great. Again, I can't say enough good things about the people involved in this one. And we still have a couple. We have another book, two more books, but another one we'll announce soon that spins out of Batman. Kind of spins out of the Batman universe. So I'm excited about that one, and I think fans will really like it.
That's great, and I also appreciate that you're really keeping all the books separate and letting every hero tell their own story, because this is an interesting status quo to explore. I'm glad that you guys aren't really moving, that it's going to take 3 years to really get to wherever you want to get. And I'm in no rush to see how Darkseid is, the god of this universe that he has created.
Oh, yeah.
And I appreciate as much mystery is still there, even though we saw so much of when he absorbed the Spectre in the All-In issue and everything.
Yep.
That it's still very confusing. Good. Keep it confusing.
Yeah, you're going to get another...
Yeah, tell me.
You'll get another big piece, spoilers. You'll get another big piece in the Free Comic Book Day special. And then we're doing... I'm sure I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. We're doing a big special coming up in... I think it's in August. It's coming soon, where you see some things about the history of this universe and the villains beginning to recognize the emergence of heroes now, and seeing why there haven't been heroes in the past in different ways. And it's very different than, like, what I love about the Ultimate Universe is that everything is really dominated by the villains. They've carved up the whole world into different countries, and it's very explicit, and they're and again, it's like I adore that whole universe. I think what John and everybody there is doing is great.
Agreed.
But we wanted to do something different here, where there isn't sort of an open, like a cabal even of people controlling things. It's more the thing about this universe to me that's, I guess, like, and again, not to get too on the couch, but what I was interested in is, like, I saw some people in the last couple of years be like, when things get really bad or dark, you really feel like the bad guys are winning or have won, or you just feel like, climate change, whatever it is that makes you feel like things are doomed, it becomes really hard to write superheroes. And I haven't quite felt that way, because for me, I love putting them up against, I just like throw them up against the things I'm most afraid of. But it got me thinking that, like, one of the things that can be, I think, a turnoff sometimes to some people occasionally is that the heroes always win. And they win, if they don't win right away, then they do win, relatively quickly. You can think about, like, what a jarring shock it was at the end of Infinity War to realize you had to wait a year for them to win again for another movie, and how traumatizing and awesome that was for fans, because you never get that. They always win at the end of the movie. And, Empire Strikes Back, where you're like, oh man, So I was like, well, what if we extend that idea where this universe, it's more about, what if the curve doesn't bend towards progress or doesn't bend towards goodness? What if what they realize when they examine it from its atoms to its dark matter, its smallest things to its biggest things, isn't that there's some god Darkseid manipulating it? Because he hasn't formed yet. He's of it, and he forms a million years from now. But what if everything is infused with this inclination towards darkness, towards bad guys winning? And so instead of winning the big war, you're faced with the concept of, what if I don't get to see myself win? What if I don't get to see my actions achieve the big thing that I hope will come about? Are they still worth doing? Like, what if I do all this stuff and I never know if it hits, never know if it goes? And that became incredibly powerful for me and Jason and Kelly when we were forming the history of it. But and then Jeff came in, and Al and Dennis, everybody's been working on it together. But it was that feeling of, like, maybe there's even more heroism to that feeling right now, for these superheroes to realize that ultimately they probably won't in their lifetime see the defeat of Darkseid or any of that stuff, or even see the world changed in a radical way. But they're just going to fight harder for that reason because they have to believe it means something, that it'll affect something down the line, or you do it just because it's the right thing to do, no matter, even if you think you're going to lose, and you know you will. So that way it became something that was like, you know, you're going to see that discovered, and you're going to see the villains sort of see that, and you're going to see how they react to this idea that, oh, you're not the heroes in this world, we are, the villains are the heroes in this world. So, like, what are you, you know? So
Yeah.
anyway, anyway, that's so you'll see it. We have a special coming that starts to fill in the connective tissue, and we do have plans in 25 to start crossing the characters with each other a little bit
Okay.
in a small way, and like very small, but also, just it's all voluntary in terms of like who wants to do it, and I would like to do it at one point. So it'll be within a year from now, like within this year, probably to right towards the end. I think probably in October, November is where we're thinking of doing a not an event, nothing like that, nothing like, oh, these characters come together to fight something. It's more like, we're talking about the kinds of ideas where it's like they're aware of each other these months because Wonder Woman is public. And so Batman is like discovering that at one point. There's, and Wonder Woman learns about the Bat person over here and the alien over there. And as the first superhero, she starts to question, should she go out and meet them? And so there's this kind of feeling like that we're building on. But we really, again, the goal is to really make sure every book feels super independent. There's no rush to, like, even the stuff that connects us to the main universe still allows us to really not have to change anything we're doing or interrupt anything we're doing. It's all meant to be, very independent, this universe. And we have no plans at all of, like, again, like, we never expected it to do this well, but it, like, has paid for itself quite a few times over already to go for a year plus, a year plus this year coming, so at least a couple years plus. So we're thrilled. We're just going to keep it going. I was talking to Kelly today, and I was like, we were just talking plans on the phone like a few hours ago, and she was like, it's, one of the first times I feel like, can I really just be like, yeah, this book is going to run for at least another year, 2 years? And I'm like, yes, it is. Like, you've already paid that forward. Like, we can plan it. Like, go plan, have fun.
That's excellent, man, and that's great to hear. Well, then it sounds like maybe that the answer to Jordan's question is going to be no. Will there be an absolute Justice League? If there will, I don't know how. Yeah,
we would love to do one, yeah, but I mean, that would be far away. I mean, again, I want the characters to be aware of each other and meet each other, but I think, again, part of the goal of this universe is to really give you the opposite of what you have in the other one. And if the other one is deliberately, right now, one of the big parts of All In was bringing back a bigger Justice League Unlimited, a bigger Justice League in the Unlimited format, so that you guys could feel like that universe, everyone is part of the same community and they're all not interchangeable, intermingling in this.
I'm
and
with
over
you.
here, they're all alone and don't know each other.
No, I understand, and I think I think it's good that you're, that's in the future, but it's certainly not the immediate future. So that's cool. And no, and by the way, everything that's happening in All In right now is a lot of fun too, and all the new books. And no, Wade is killing it on Unlimited. I just talked to Philip Kennedy Johnson about.
I know, I saw. Yeah.
Thank you for watching, Batman and Robin. And yeah, and again, it's interesting because Damian is getting to know Thomas, and through Absolute, we're seeing Bruce and Martha's relationship. So no, I think that's great that the Waynes are getting their moment in these different universes and stuff.
Well, the other thing I'll say really quick, and then I'll leave off with this. I don't mean to keep going down these rabbit holes, but
I love the rabbit holes, but keep going.
Well, the rabbit hole is like what people don't always understand from the outside, not that they should, but are kind of, the a lot of it is just the way the people at the company at the moment, and the pressure they're under in different things. So like when you look at what Marvel is doing or DC is doing, you don't have, as a fan, and nor should you, like a window in, right? And so when we did All In, like, to be clear about like why I think it's such a great moment too, back in New York, you're all in one building. You got no corporate oversight. It was like the Wild West in terms of comics just being comics and that. Over the course of my time in comics, like we got bought by Warner Brothers as Disney acquired, Marvel. The movies started, the movies became this humongous juggernaut. They moved the company in DC out to Burbank. They had this beautiful office. Then they moved the office to another building at Warner Brothers after COVID, where it's part of a more of a Warner Brothers series of offices. So it does have like DC logos and stuff here and there, but it's intermingled with like Harry Potter stuff and all kinds of everything. Warner Brothers is all over. And you
Okay.
can kind of go work anywhere you want in the building. There's no set places. It's that kind of WeWork mentality. And ultimately, over the course of these last years, comics has been integrated into so many different things and had so many suitors and partners, and streaming has been a huge part of comics in different ways, where indie series have been, because of streaming being such a boom up until a few years ago, so many series were getting optioned and all these comic companies had deals with streaming. And meanwhile, like, Marvel and DC had these connections to this booming TV and movie stuff. And then there's a speculator market that comes around during COVID, where covers and all this is, and like all that stuff is kind of gone. And it doesn't mean, I don't mean like movies and TV is gone, but it's in a quiet period right now until, and streaming has really sort of leveled out and become normalized. And so the speculator market is not there the same way anymore either, which is good in my opinion. So ultimately what you're left with is a comic market that's kind of like the real market, that not a bad market, the real market. And the gamble with All In was, when we spoke to retailers, it was like, if you guys, because DC was like, we'll do it, but we don't know how big we can make it. Maybe one absolute book every couple of months, like, and do 3 max, like, and All In, maybe we do 5 of the mainline books, have jumping on points. And when we went to retailers, they were like, there's a huge audience out there. They just want coordination and something exciting that feels like a massive, all at once thing. And that was the challenge, was going to DC and finding everybody from New York there, and all, people from LA too. But the culture of work there had become much more like, a lot of people work from home, a lot of people are there, everyone works in different areas of the building. After a lot of chaotic times, there was comfort in everybody doing their own books that they really liked, and great books. But there wasn't the same centrality. There wasn't like the feeling that we're all DC Comics in this together and we're going to take a big swing as a unit, because everyone was kind of, not just doing their own thing because they all talked to each other, but there was just a feeling of like people were doing the books they liked and that. And so Josh and I, part of the challenge was to go out there and be like, to fly out and be everybody in a room and be like, let's just all do something together at once. And marketing, we're going to make a bigger push to talk to you, and sales, we're going to make a bigger push to talk to you, so editorial and creators. And we're going to we're going to do summits again. We're going to do Zoom summits if we can't do in person. We're going to do weekly calls. We're going to make sure everyone knows what everyone is doing and they're all excited about it. And we're going to have plenty of time now to plan it out. So we planned All In, like I said, almost 2 years before it happened, to get to know each other, to really build it. And so the culture at DC right now is so exciting, because not because we changed it, because everybody decided to change it a little bit there, and all credit honestly to Jim Marie and Anne and Chris Conroy and the great people there. But they do that now, where we have these summits, and we just had one in secret, and we get together and we talk. And there's a feeling there of coordination, that we're one ecosystem, thriving together. And so like, and I'm doing consulting again for another year, as is Josh, another more than a year. But I have like the ability to move around and ask what's going on, and connect people, and it's just been great. So that's part of the fun of it, is that it feels like, yes, we have a 3-year plan, and no, we're not all unaware of what each other is doing. We're really trying to dial in. And so if last year was about the absolute universe, not even last year, but like just 4 months ago,
Sure.
like it was about 5 months ago, then this year we're really focused on, we're still doing these brand new absolute books that come out literally this month and next.
Yeah.
But when I say this year, we're writing and planning stuff now for the end of the year, almost already, for the summer and the end of the year. then the end of this year into 26 is about shining a light on the main line and really giving you some amazing, exciting stuff there as well, on top of what we already are really proud of. It's working there. So that's kind of the plan.
I'm seeing questions regarding Absolute Joker.
Oh yeah.
Beyond him being incredibly rich, what can you tell us about the character?
Well, you're gonna see him for a moment in 6. You'll see him. I can tell you that he is the opposite of Batman in every way. He's not like a play on Elon Musk or any of that stuff. Like again, like he was created before Elon became as public a figure in terms of politics and all this as he is. But what makes this Joker really scary, like probably the scariest one to me that I feel like I've written, is that he has a philosophy about the world is opposite to Batman's. Like Joker to me is always the Joker card, right? In Joker card in the deck can take on any value you want it to and to win, right? And the Joker sees himself that way with Batman, and in a mystical way, as a writer, the Joker is that for me personally. My take on him is he'll become whatever Batman's worst fear is to hit him with it, you know? And so here, if this Batman believes he can change things, if this Batman believes it's possible, then this Joker is someone who is all about it being absolutely impossible. And he's got, the resources. He has islands and he has planes and he's got cars and he's been hooked into the economic system for many, many years as well. His company goes all the way back to the, early 1900s. So he's been there for or his, I won't give, his company has been there for over 100 years and part of a lot of the big moments of the 20th century. And he has sort of, or what am I don't want to spoil anything. He has like, he is the Joker, I will say, beneath too. He's not like the laughing clown Joker, but the physicality of him on the surface, he's like handsome Bruce Wayne, where he is trained, and he's trained with all the people that Bruce Wayne trained with. So he trained with Henry Ducard, and he trained with the League of Assassins and killed them. He killed all of them, and he with Henry Ducard and killed him. And so he's the deadliest. He believes in being the apex predator of like the world. He believes in survival of the fittest. He believes in that ultimately, like, that it's a joke to think that we should work together, that empathy is important, or that collectivism means anything, and that we should never have evolved past brutality. But now that we have, the benefit is you can be even more so. And so he's really dark, like really dark, and no life or thousands of lives are worth more than a penny to him, hence the penny in his cave. So he's very much like a flip, where he's very rational and he's not gleeful and running around, and he's not there's no kind of like I'm gonna kill everybody like the Batman who laughs. He has like he had the economy of a country at his disposal, and he finds that world affairs, he has a belief about the way the world should go, and he's been doing this for a while. And and beneath the way he looks, all the handsome stuff, he's the scariest looking Joker. So you'll see he's got like these secrets as to why he's handsome and not, when he looks like the Joker. And but when you see him, which you see a glimpse of it soon in 6. But when you see what he really looks like and that stuff, I mean, I think he's really terrifying. I think he's super different than anything I've been a part of, and he'll be pretty startling. I love him. He's so dark that it was one of the few things that, like, he does a few things where I was like, I don't know if DC's gonna let me get away with this, but they're on board. He's gross also. He's like his physicality is gross when you see him. He's grotesque. There's a lot of body horror to him.
Oh, excellent.
But he's coming. You'll see he's behind this coming arc. There's a 2-issue one I'm doing with Marcos Martin, who I love, about Mr. Freeze. But it comes right off of the last arc. So it continues some of the threads that were set up there. And then it sets up the next arc because Mr. Freeze is doing something that feeds into Arc M in the next arc. And that arc is really about Bruce needing to figure out what's happening in Arc M, and Joker being like, you know what? I think this guy is kind of amusing. Send Bane to go talk to him. And that's the next arc, which is really fun. So Bane is so big. Like that's the other thing too. People are like, maybe in this world he'll be really small. It's like, no, he's very big. It's really fun because the scaling of him next to Batman is awesome. Where you're just like, because this Batman is so big, and then you see he's like, you see this guy, and it's like, oh man, he's gonna get his ass handed to him. So, and he's different. He's got the same. I won't give too much away about Bane, but he's got a he's everything that the main universe Bane has. Like, there's a similar background to him about Santa Prisca and a lot of stuff like that. But he's also there's new elements to him that I'm really proud of that I think make him even scarier, like more smarter and more deadly in different ways. He's really he's like a brilliant strategist also. So he's for all kinds of reasons, and he's sort of the first. He's tied to all of the Arkham. Like basically what we've revealed. I don't know how many people picked up on it, but there've been these different private prisons where Joker has set them up all over the world, and they're privatized, and they're like black sites. So you go into it, and no one knows what happens to you. And Arc A was the first one, and it was in Santa Prisca. And Arc B was in Russia. Arc C, and maybe that made KG Beast. Arc C is somewhere else. And then Arc M, which is lucky number 13, which is Joker's favorite number, is because M is 13th letter, is here in Gotham, and this is his crown jewel, the one that he's been planning a long time. So
Okay.
I feel like I just gave away way too much, but I'm excited about it. So forgive me. I really love the book.
Honestly, Scott, I'm trying, and truly, that's whatever you feel comfortable with. But because again, and I say this all the time when people like yourself or John's was always like that. You want to know what happens next? Like, I want to read it, man. It's cool. It's
Jeff,
cool.
That
and
was
again,
the funniest thing. Jeff
but
and
yeah.
I, the couple interviews we did together, it was like we gave everything away because both of us just played off each other. Where it was like, oh yeah, I'll have spoiler, your spoiler, and whatever.
But no, that's great. You guys are enthusiastic about your stories. That's wonderful, and it comes through. And when we read them and everything, no. But no, everyone is really asking minutia questions, and it's like I'm not going to ask that because, like, read the story, kids. That's kind of the point. So
yeah, I mean, you can ask me anything.
I know, man.
I'll tell you if I can't say it. But.
Well, RM Chapman wants to know if Absolute Bane has a brain.
Oh yeah, he's really smart. He's really smart. So in Last Night Returns, like maybe that's what he's referring to, like Last Night on Earth, where we did our the last Batman story Greg and I did.
Yeah.
Bane had been turned into this kind of mindless brute. I understand. He had his head literally, he was missing part of his brain. Yeah, but here he's quite smart.
The Slops McFlops wants to know, will there be an absolute milestone?
I mean, we really want to keep. Right now, we're trying to keep things really tight. Part of the magic of it is having a manageable universe. I think some of the books, like Martian Manhunter, are modular, where it's a miniseries, but it did. The numbers were so high that my guess is we'll wind up doing more than what was originally planned. That said, the goal is not to have more than like 7 books running at any time or around that. I mean, we might do one more here or there, but I feel like having something people can pick up all of them and is why like the Ultimate Universe works well right now too. So we don't have plans to expand that wide, but we do have a couple books that we're planning on that we're excited about. So
that's cool. And Don Lentz is saying something nice that when we talk, make him want to run to the comic book store with every conversation. So that's nice. Thank you
so much. Yeah, that's the goal, right?
Sure, absolutely. Caesar wants to know, and others are agreeing, and he plans for Absolute Ventriloquist.
Nick had an idea he mentioned him the other day. I would love to do the I've never written the Ventriloquist. And I have an idea for how he could be really creepy now, so I would like to do that. Scarecrow is the other character that popped into my head, like, because part of it is we have the series is planned through about issue 24 right now. Not every single issue exactly, but like I told you, like the next arc carries us through issue 15, and then there'll be a couple interstitial issues in between that arc and the next big arc. The way that Mr. Freeze interstitial issues here function in 7 and 8, there'll be another couple there, probably 2 to 3, and that will be 16, 17, 18. So you can see the third arc which is planned right now, would be take us through like 24. But every now and then I have an idea for something else where like ventriloquist or there, you know, Scarecrow was the other big one. I feel like Clayface, I have an idea. And I'm like, maybe we push that third arc off and do arcs in between. And so, yeah, I don't know. Yes, I'd love to use him. I've never used him. Probably Scarecrow or Clayface first, but yeah.
Okay. And here, Meet Angel is asked, or Meet Agel, I apologize, Agel.
Yeah.
Are we going to see any appearances of Absolute Catwoman?
Yeah, 100%. Like we've been holding off on it just because we want it to really hit when she comes in. But
Sure.
you'll learn more about her. The second arc, the arc with Arc M, not the Mr. Freeze two-parter. The second arc in earnest, like the bigger arc. Part of the backstory involves Selina and Bruce when they're older. They're not kids anymore, and they're in their late teens, you know, and they're together, and they're in this really passionate kind of relationship. And it's how they kind of decide to go not separate ways, like they won't see each other again, but anyway. But you'll get a hint of kind of, you'll see her building Catwoman there, and then we have like, yes, Catwoman is coming into the series in a big way this year in 25.
Okay, and it makes sense because again, she's part of the group of all the rogues, and
they leave a chair out. They always leave a chair out for her at the gambling table and hope that she'll show up. But you will actually, like, she not to give too much away, but you will actively see her in the present at some point without spoiling exactly where in the second arc, in the second big arc. So, and then you'll see her in earnest, like really come in soon, like as Catwoman in that way too. And this Catwoman is badass, man. I'm excited. Like, part of the idea was, again, like, I love classic Catwoman. I love Catwoman, you know, in the suit with the ears and the, you know, the whip and the going to get the diamonds out of the safe. But it also feels very this universe, the Maronis and the Falcones and all the stuff in the, you know, that. So we wanted to do a version where she's still Selina. She's Selina Kyle. She grew up with them, same kind of background, you know, same kind of parentage, but she's much more like less, she's still sexy and all those things, you know, and still so, you know, like has that element to the way she carries herself. But I just feel like modernizing it to a degree where the pitch I got from somebody for who she is in that way, and that we're working with is awesome. She has like a whole kind of Ethan Hunt quality to her where she has a lot of resources that Bruce does not have, and it makes it a lot of fun to have her come in and be like, you should have stuck with me, you know what I mean, like in that way. And that, yeah, so, and they have I love their relationship. I love writing it. It's a really interesting kind of Batcat feel because they grew up together and they have this whole different thing. But she's awesome, and she's, you know, again, like the other characters, none of them are villains. She's not a villain to me in this one, but she's just taken a different path than Bruce or the other kids, and you know, when she comes in, I think I hope people love her as much as we do because she's like one of my favorite pieces of the whole mythos.
Well, and then that's why, again, I think this is an interesting opportunity. I mean, we've already seen it in the regular universe that Selina knows Bruce and can, you know, really get inside of who Bruce is. But I think having the rogues grow up with him now in the Absolute universe, even more so. So I look forward to these conversations with my old pal Eddie that's now on the other side of what I'm trying to do. And you know, things like that. So, and the same with the rest of the gang. You know, I think that's going to be pretty fun to see.
It's really fun. You'll see in I mean, because I'm trying to think in 5 if he. No, you don't know. I don't want to spoil it. You don't see, but there's a big change in all their relationships in 6. So you'll see. It's fun.
Okay. Because I don't know who's going to recognize that their old pal Bruce is suddenly this, you know, bat that's a threat to.
That would be a thing. That would be interesting, right? Because then they'd all have different reactions. Where Harvey would probably be like, "I should probably have you arrested," and Ozzy would be like, "You know, you and I are not going to get along anymore because he has all these underground dealings."
Sure.
And
yeah.
You know, Waylon would probably just want to punch him and be like, "What are you doing with yourself?" You know. And Selina would probably think it's kind of cool. Honestly, I think at that point, like, she'd be like, "Yeah, good for you." But and Eddie would just be like, I could have guessed this is who you were long ago. Yeah, Eddie already hinted in issue 3 that he kind of knows. So
Yes, and again, that's what I love these moments, and again, that's why I like that you are doling them out very patiently and everything, and these kind of little tidbits. Really, and Black Mask is a threat in a way that I don't think he ever was before in the regular universe. I mean, cool idea,
thanks.
cool mask and everything, but no, I think a lot more dangerous, especially in this first arc.
I love writing them. I mean, I go to work so happy with Nick. And I did with Greg too. I just mean
Sure.
I think the difference is like when we did Batman the first time, there's a pressure on the main Batman to hit a certain number every month and to really hold a line where at that time it was 100,000 where it was like don't fall below 100,000. It's a different era and different economics to
Yeah.
align back then. And now with this book, there were no expectations on it at all. In terms of, I remember Nancy, who's the head of sales at DC, telling me like, "Look, we're the goal. If we can hit 100 with issue 1, like I'll dance around the office. You know what I mean? Because who knows? It's no one knows if anyone will show up. And we're closing in on almost 500 at this point with it and 6, 7 printings. And
Wow.
I don't mean that to brag. I just mean by way of being like, we never thought it would have that audience. And so the joy of this book is like I am aware of the readership, and there is pressure in that regard. But I kind of was forged in the other era of Batman where it was real pressure of like if Batman doesn't do well, the line doesn't do well, the quarter doesn't do well, people could get fired. Like that was always the worry. With this, it's more like this joy that it did better than we had hoped. And so there's pressure, but it's more like it's not our job to hold the line up the way it was before. Our job is to just do this crazy book that we made up. And the fact that it wound up being a driver of a driver as Absolute Wonder Woman is, as Absolute Superman is just a real thrill. It's not the same kind of like, oh my God, how do we also keep this up? It's more like, holy shit, this is awesome. You know what I mean? So it's great.
No, that's excellent. Shine Comics wants to know, I know you've heard about the news of the Marvel DC crossover this year. Who is your favorite Marvel character and what dream crossover would you do?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I know. I'm very excited about it. Know the shape, and it sounds awesome. It's going to be incredible. I'm very excited. Um, God, there's so many I would do. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to write. I've never written any of them except for Iron Man and Colossus and Magic. Some of the Iron Man crew. So I mean, for me, my big one. I mean, the character that I've always wanted to write over there is Cap. I have this idea for Captain America that I've always wanted to do. But it's changed over the years and become something bigger than it used to be. But that's my big dream project there. But there are quite a few. I mean, I have an idea. I would love to write Spider-Man one day. I mean, I love that character dearly, and Wolverine, Ghost Rider. There, one character I really have an idea for, which I know is like kind of, you know, off table right now, is the Punisher. I mean, I've always loved that character, but I understand he can be really problematic. But the thing that's interesting to me about him is that uh, the way in which the sort of whole meaning of him and what he is, I feel like has gotten sort of all over the place, like the symbol and all these things. But at core, he was a guy who went up against this incredibly corrupt system where it was the mob, killed his family, the people that were in power cover it up, and he's just going after them. Like it's about him going back. And I feel like the idea of an older, I don't want to give it too much away, but I'd love the idea of doing something that's older, where it's more like, he's very unhappy or very feels like everything he did came to a bad end and violence that he didn't, what did it mean? And then he has a chance to kind of make it make sense and wants to do it. So I don't even know why I'm pitching this, but this is like to you, I mean, I don't, why I'm down a rabbit hole being like, how would I do it? But yeah, the point, like only takeaway from that just being that there's a lot of Marvel stuff I'd love to do. There's a lot. Like I would love to go there one day. I don't have any plans right now. They've always been really nice to me, and I have tons of friends over there. I'm really close with CB and love like everyone there. We're all good friends, but yeah, I'm really happy over here right now.
I understand, man. And hey, it took Bendis 20 years to finally do some DC work, so it's all right. You're mid career. It's all right, man. You got plenty of time, and
Right?
no. And again, honestly, I'm thrilled that you have all these new ideas for Batman, given that it felt like you put everything on the field with Greg in your and even before Greg, even going back to Black
Jock.
Mirror and
Yeah.
and Jock, exactly, man. So
Jock has a special issue. We're gonna do an Absolute too later. So I'm
hey,
excited.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think that the enduring thing about this character for me, he's always been my favorite, but it's that, he's such a simple construction and you just push him against the things you're afraid of and it energizes you where you're like, Batman would go up against that. And I love pushing him up against those things.
King of New York actually makes a suggestion and it gives me the opportunity to ask you about the new Disney Daredevil. But he says Scott on Daredevil would be so cool. Would you want to do Daredevil?
That. Oh, yeah? I'd love to do. Daredevil is another favorite. I mean, I grew up on Born Again and
Sure.
all the Man Without Fear and I loved what's been on. Charles is a really good friend. Chip is a really good friend. I feel like that Daredevil has had amazing stories over the last 10 years. Nonstop.
100%, man.
So yeah, I mean Daredevil. I would write Daredevil in a heartbeat. I would love to do Daredevil one day. So yeah, that's another one. I'm excited to watch. I haven't watched Born Again.
Haven't watched it yet? Okay. Yeah,
it's not. No, I didn't get it. Yes, I was doing family stuff last night, so
that's cool. No, man, and I understand. Honestly, it was such a relief, that's all. I mean, I certainly won't spoil anything for you, but it really was like, oh no. It's they're absolutely, from a tone standpoint, picking up from Netflix. And that's great
really
because, I was a little afraid of more of a PG-13 Daredevil. And it's like, no, it's still an R-rated book, as well it should be. And everybody's, acting their asses off. It's fantastic.
That's great, man. No, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, and it's gonna be cool. Let's see here. Who else and what else? Meet Angel says, I hope someday in the future you could do Dr. Fate. Is this awesome character? This is an awesome character from the DC universe. Would you ever do Dr. Fate?
I would. I actually got really close to doing more with Dr. Fate back when we were doing right after the first Metal, when we were doing No Justice and that stuff, me and Josh and Francis Manipul, and I became really really fascinated with the DC magic characters and mysticism, and Dr. Fate was right at the front of that because I had such a good time on Swamp Thing and that I was like, I'd love to go back to that corner of the DCU, but
sure,
it didn't happen. But no, I love that character.
That's cool. And people were asking, and I think it's interesting. I don't know how much of what the Absolute universe would intrigue James Gunn, and if you've had any conversations with James since he has taken his place now at the DC universe.
Well, he's been really supportive. I mean, I told him I sent him the issue really early of Absolute Batman. I told him what we were doing, and he's been extremely kind and he's very responsive. We DM'd on Twitter, and again, he flew me and Josh Williamson and a bunch of us, Frank Quitely and Dan Jurgens, down to the set in Georgia to see Superman being filmed back in May of last year, and it was amazing. He was so kind and put us up in the hotel, came over, hung out with us, showed us all kinds of spoilers, took us around the different sets, and it was awesome. And he, not only that, the thing that was so impressive about him was that he knew the comics back to front, and a lot of what he was inspired by, and he knew, again, were the stories that I love, and that, even obscure ones. But he is a real connoisseur and comic book fan at heart. And it was awesome. When we walked into the hotel, they had the library shelves, and they were full of DC comics. It was really
it's great.
Cool. It was all the favorites, that he had there. So it was, he's been very nice. So again, I never want to push anything in that zone and be like, hey, we should do this. It's more just everything that we've shown him, just to keep him abreast of what we're doing. He's been incredibly, supportive of and kind about. So I have nothing but good things to say about him.
That's cool. King of New York wants to know how you chose which rogues to make Bruce's friends and which to keep as rogues.
That's a really good question. I actually took a long time to decide that because at first I was like, well, Waylon was the one that came first because I was like, what it really broke down to was I realized that Bruce, without any money, would not have traveled the world to find the geniuses of each thing.
Yeah.
Because he'd need to stay home and make money and help out his mom and all of this kind of stuff. And so his training would actually be Gotham based. I didn't want him to like travel even the country. I just felt like, he could take a tour of the country to get inspired, but I didn't want him having a sabbatical, because it's just not something I feel like,
A working class guy would be capable of taking a sabbatical. Sure.
yeah, or even like it feels so it's so baked into the DNA of the classic Batman that it just didn't feel right to me. And so I was like, well, which characters could have taught him things he would take to be Batman in this universe? Like, which characters can I use that would have been his friends in Crime Alley that also he could have learned a skill from, right? So what you'll see over the course of the next arcs is that like Waylon taught him to fight. He trained with Waylon, who's a UFC sort of champion, and a lot of that comes in next arc with the Bane arc, the Arkham arc, and with Eddie, he really learned all kinds of critical thinking about not only detection and all the kind of detective stuff, but analysis, really big system analysis stuff and things, so he can really think strategically. He's a really smart guy and he's an engineer on his own. But then with Harvey, he learns all about city politics and he learns about like, this, and with Ozzy, he learns the underworld. He learns all about crime and the criminal mentality. And so he's got this whole, that's how I kind of came up with them. And with Selina, Selina's the one where he really learns like the importance of fighting, not fighting physically, but the importance of like, you don't let anything beat you down. And he has a kindred spirit in her because of what she's been through in life. And the way that she's always like, she's hopeful in her own way. And she believes in their mission. You'll see is when they're teenagers of robbing bad people's apartments and that stuff, and getting them back in that way. So she's got a really good heart too. Anyway, so that's the idea, is that each one of them has helped form Batman. I couldn't think of something for like Scarecrow to me is, and then there were just the ones that felt like they're scary and dark in a way that I wanted to sort of push them out of that circle, because it just felt like, Scarecrow is just spooky in a way that feels like I wouldn't want to. I don't know who he'd be as it would take away from his character, the frighteningness of his character, to make him someone they grew up with, unless he really got, completely transformed in some way, which, could have been cool. But ultimately, like, these were the ones that felt like they made the most sense in terms of, being really human and vulnerable and teach him something.
Is there room for a Court of Owls in this Absolute Gotham?
I keep thinking about that. I'm trying to figure out who they would be, because it in a lot of ways, their role, like, because they always operate in secret, and yet like a lot of what happens at this point is out in the open, so there's a lot of like, it's different when it's like, a cabal of sort of rich patrician people from the sort of aristocracy of whatever, secretly guiding things, but it feels nowadays more like the people who want power, have power, that have money, are right in your face. So it's a bit of a strange construction. So I haven't quite figured out how they fit in yet.
I understand.
But yeah.
Well, you're right, and the ethos of this universe, is hey, we're doing what we want. And that again, I love, and we, when you were talking about how Darkseid's spirit is really, infused in this universe, it's like a reverse of the Judeo-Christian, set of ethics and things that we grew up with. Good must triumph over evil. Good is better than evil, and it's the better way to be. And no, that, like you said, the DNA is like, that's the sucker's way, man. No, it's get what you can any way you can and stuff. And that's, so says the Book of Darkseid. Darkseid is.
It is. That's the way it feels. And that doesn't mean there's any validation of that. In fact, it's the opposite, where again, I think the excitement about these heroes is that they burn brighter in the dark, So that
Sure.
feeling of them being like Batman is not coming around to that point of view. And I think that's the fun of it. The books are written for the idea that it's important to be heroic, even if you don't wind up seeing, the whole world change to good in front of your face. That's not the goal, the way it is in the main universe, where they do stop these incredible things in their team, and they save the world over and over. This might be a world where you win the battle, but you never see the end of the war. You never see it go the other way, but you hope that battle means something,
Shine Comics wants to know, with Absolute Batman as your second major take on The Dark Knight, 13 years after New 52, how does it feel knowing your work has shaped Batman for 2 generations of young readers?
I thank you for that question, but I don't like I can't even wrap my head around it. I mean, when I got to DC in 2009, 2008 or 9 or whenever I first started with them, before I got on Detective or any of that stuff, and I was pitching American Vampire.
Yeah.
I mean, my dream was to one day get to write Batman, and my honest thing that I said to my wife was like, maybe in like 10 years I'll get a chance to write Batman one day, and small Batman story was what I thought I'd get to do. And I just Mr. Magoo walked in and lucked out where they had an opening on Detective, and it's just been such a rocket ship ride where I think it's almost lucky I haven't had time to think about it, because it's just like you're on the book and then it went straight from Detective to Batman, and it was like terrifying, and always being like not just imposter syndrome, but feeling like you were genuinely an imposter who doesn't deserve any of this, and you're like, I just have to write it and write it the best I can do and just keep going. So there was never any time to think about it, and I've tried pretty hard to just block that out for this one too, and be like, follow the rule. I teach this class on Substack. We're going to do one next week, actually, about writing a personal story, how to keep comics personal, whether you're doing massive stuff or, big events, or you're doing indie stuff. But the golden rule of the class is always, you've got to write the comic that you would like to find the most that day. It doesn't matter what it is to me, like whatever I'm helping you with, whether it's a space opera or a comedy or memoir or political, whatever. It just has to be the one that would be most exciting to you and inspiring to you to find. And so I've tried to, one of the reasons I teach, like full disclosure secret, is that it forces me to sort of try and adhere to those tenets when I'm saying them over and over to people. It keeps me young as a writer to be like, if I'm telling everybody they got to do it, I can't be so hypocritical that I don't try to do that too. And that's the way I'm trying to approach Absolute Batman. It's just like, it's just simply the comic I would love to read right now if I was a fan, Batman fan. And I honestly, again, I never thought, nor did Nick, that it would take off this way. And to know that we've had any impact on the lore and the legacy of Gotham in the main universe, or hear any of it, it's the biggest thrill in my whole life professionally. It really is. I never thought I'd get to touch the Batman mythos at all, and to have gotten to build as much as we built, I don't know how to say thank you enough, because it's like if you told kid me that this would be the job and this is what I get to do, my head would explode. I don't even. It's literally my dream job. From being, there are pictures of me as a child, like little kid, drawing Batman, all of it, Batman. So I just never thought I'd get to do it, but the fact that here I am, it's just. I don't know, I don't know what I did in a form, like whose soul I sold in a former life or whatever to get this, but I feel like the luckiest guy ever. It sounds hokey, but I mean it,
I get it, man. Absolutely. All right. A couple of people are asking about, would we see, especially with Loeb and Jim Lee coming back to Hush, would there be an absolute Hush or an absolute Tommy Elliott?
Oh yeah, there is a Tommy Elliott. I have a plan for a Tommy Elliott in this universe. Yeah, you might see his name. I think it'll come in soon. But I know who he is in this world. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's cool. And yeah. Oh, good. King of New York. You read my mind. I was going to ask about, and I'm really glad you brought up American Vampire again, because truly, man, great series, and your Swamp Thing work as well, as you said earlier. No, thanks. Man, you're good at horror. And with that in mind, King of New York asking any updates on the Witches animated series.
Yeah, man. I was telling John the stuff I can't say too publicly, like before we got on the air, but we're in production right now, so we're recording the voices. It's really exciting. Just today, and we're doing it again next week. On Thursday, there's a studio in LA, and the actors come and they because the way you do animation is they do the voices first, and then they animate over it. So they storyboard it after they have the recordings. So right now we have the test animation, which looks awesome. It looks like Jock's art come to life, and we have an awesome, amazing cast, people that you would know and recognize, and we just lucked out with the cast. And yeah, it'll be you'll see a lot more of it, I would think, in it, coming out in 26. So it'll take a year. It'll take this year to animate it, at least like into 26, because it takes that long. And also the strike pushed things back, so it takes there's a line of things to get animated and all of that too. But I'm really excited. It's the people that do Invincible. It's on Amazon. It'll be on Amazon. It's the same studio, and yeah, it's gonna be fun.
That's excellent to hear, man. Absolutely. Let's see here. How much impact is AI having on the development of DC All In? What is the future of digital comics and their impact on content creation?
I was just listening to something about this today. It's really interesting because I mean like my I've been looking a lot into AI's like history. It's built into some of the story with Batman, because again, like a lot of it is economics, and believe that like there's a event horizon coming with AI, not in some way like the Terminator or whatever it is, like any crazy, but I just think that it's going to be a transformative technology where it'll replace the internet, it'll replace Google. You'll have an AI. They'll reveal it in a year or two. I'm sure they'll have some, generalized AI that you can use to like do many many things, like ask it to go book you a flight or bring back, and it will search the internet and do that, or write you this, or it'll do all the coding. Coding will be like computers coding for computers. And my wife already, she's a doctor there, it's already being implemented in all kinds of medical scans and all of this. And it'll be something that, like the iPhone, just changes things, and
Yeah.
changes the labor market in all kinds of ways.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I've been reading about it a lot for some story points in Absolute Batman. What Eddie is working on is generalized AI with his Riddler thing. But what I think it'll do, I mean, I'm a big believer, and this is, maybe I'm completely naive. I'm amazed at what it's capable of. Like I've seen it in action when it comes to it taking notes, with like it takes incredible notes, like when you do like when you're talking to your friend about the story and you're doing this and you're asking, I mean, like it's already amazing. But at core, like I genuinely believe that like you show up, writing and the arts is a place that's about human connection. It's about expressing things from experience and from fear and hope and emotion that machines are incapable of, and so it's not about could it write a good story, like could a robot be taught to play really good basketball? Yes, like I do think, but or do the high jump in the Olympics. But there's certain areas that they're about human achievement, human connection, human emotion, and I don't think they're almost kind of just out of place there. Like I wouldn't want a painting by a AI. And not because I don't think it couldn't do a great painting, but because what's interesting about painting is that it isn't perfect. It's made by people to express things that they care about. And, that to me is writing, and so I'm not threatened by it the way, I mean, I certainly think it's a threat in a lot of ways. I'm not trying to minimize it, but I don't think it's going to replace, is what I mean, like, writers in that way, where I do think that it's going to have a really big impact is on entry level stuff all across the industry. Like most people I know, like the way you make it into like writers rooms, for example, is as script coordinators or as copy, a lot of the things that this technology will take away. And so it's that kind of area where young people come in and train and learn how to do the thing that I'm most worried about, because I feel like writers that are established who've learned the craft in different ways, like it's less, maybe less threatening. Um, whereas I'd be very worried if I was breaking in now, only because there's a lot of ways that I learned to write that I don't think will exist soon. So that's kind of my biggest thing about its impact.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Especially given my conversations with TV and film screenwriters and how the writers' room dynamic is changing. And again, the companies that have the purse strings, they don't understand that. They really don't.
I don't.
These are streaming TV is another widget that Apple sells,
Yeah.
and no different than an iPhone, or it's another product. And so yeah, when it's like, why do you need 15 writers and writers assistants to make a successful TV show? We don't understand that, and we're not going to pay for that. And maybe there's a better understanding post strike, but that was always my concern.
And I agree with you. I think that the value of it, it'll be recognized in the, because ultimately, like, maybe we go through something where they try and implement a lot of AI, but I think I have a moral objection to AI in a lot of ways as well, because it's trained on writing that it shouldn't have been trained on, and I think it's always going to have the original sin of having like stolen material or read and used material without
Yeah,
the permission of the people. So to me, it's like it's always going to be kind of a bankrupt technology when it comes to using it creatively,
agreed.
to make things. So like at core, it'll never get past that for me and the people I know. So I wouldn't use it for creative purposes in that way. And I think it's obviously the same for art. But again, with art, you see people being like, well, it can generate these things and it can make these, and I'm going to make a comic with it. But I wouldn't want to read the comic even if AI weren't trained on things that make it, to me, ethically problematic. I want a comic is the collaboration or the singular vision of an artist. Like, it's somebody who is is making this thing. Like, I don't want to watch robots, running in the 100-meter dash in the Olympics, because it's about what humans can do, even if they can't run as fast. So maybe this could write something better on a craft level, but it's hollow because the thing didn't experience any of it. Like, it didn't learn that thing. Like, I remember sitting across from Jim Lee when we were doing Superman Unchained, him telling me how he came to his style and the way, during this year of his life where he was like, I've got to learn how to learn my voice artistically, because I have 1 year where my parents are going to humor me before they don't I'm in medical school with this. And it's those stories. How did you learn who you are? It's a spiritual thing for people that work in it, as corny as that is to sound. Like, my becoming, the way I learned to write is my life. Like, I mean, I don't mean like it's just my experiences. I mean, the story of how I learned to do that and the experiences I had to do that, the people I've met, the classes, the hardships, the rejection, like all kinds of stuff. It's not it's just, it's baked into it, and it's always changing. And that's what I follow people to, like. I pick up a Jason Aaron comic because I'm on a life journey with him. Like, I'm not interested in a machine writing something that might be even technically better than any of us could do, because it's not about the formal quality of it. It's about connecting with people. That is a core. It's communicative. That's at core what the arts are, all of them. Expressing yourself, and there's nothing in AI that can do that. And I don't see it as a tool to do that with, because again, it's not only is it, like, again, ethically problematic, but it's just regurgitating things that it took from other people. It's not making something because of its experience that way.
I
Anyway.
do, and I appreciate that. And honestly, I think writers like you're doing it right now with Absolute Batman. You are expressing Batman ideas that are not conventional, and at least right now, AI can only give you what's come before. And my favorite example I always give is when Azzarello wrote that story with Jim Lee for Tomorrow.
For Tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, all right, Superman's having a crisis of faith. And it's like, well, that's not super. My
Yeah.
easy template for Superman is the George Reeves show. He crashes through the wall. The
Sure.
gangsters shoot at him. The bullets bounce off. They he ducks out of the way of the gun being thrown at him. He unties Lois and they fly away. I mean that's your
Yeah.
typical Superman. But all of a sudden it's like, no, Superman has problems with what's his thoughts about faith and religion, and he's really having this crisis of conscience. And again, where you're putting Bruce right now is not typical. Like AI wouldn't come up with this, I don't think, for Bruce. I really
Well,
don't.
even if it did, let's say it did, like the fun for me of finding a great story or a great comic is understanding, like, reading it, interpreting it, and then I love the part of like learning about the writer and the artist and where this came from. And my hope, like doing things like this and talking to you, is that that's what other people respond to as well, about saying like this was inspired by the fact that I feel more like Alfred than I do like Bruce, and my
Sure.
kids are Bruce to me here, whereas in the old days I was Bruce. And those are the things that even as a reader make me excited. How did Stephen King come up with the idea for Pet Cemetery? That is, part of the joy of that. And if I knew that it was just generated by a program, it's not interesting to me because it's human. It's that. So again, I know people are excited about that technology and in all kinds of ways. And again, I think it's got a lot of really amazing uses coming, and it's going to change everything. And I think there'll be a lot of incredible benefit to that, and a lot of disruption, and a lot of all kinds of hardship too. But the arts and sports and these things, like, to me, it's these areas that I just, in terms of production, it's not something I look to in any way for, you know. But
I
I think
do.
it could be amazing supportively about research and all that stuff and
Oh, I
everything.
understand. Yeah. No, I get that. But hey, man, believe me, my old radio job is going by way of the dodo, writing commercial copy, because unfortunately, more mom and pop businesses just want a very dry. This is the service we provide. Call this number, and yeah, AI can spit out a commercial copy a lot quicker and cheaper than hiring somebody like me to write that kind of. I mean, I always tried to make more creative commercials when I was in radio and stuff. But yeah, man, it's like, oh, they just really want a straight sell. And it's like, well, AI is already taking care of that. And thank God right now, the voices at least are still too dispassionate from an AI standpoint. And you can tell when you're hearing an AI voice. I'm sure it'll change. But yeah, but I agree with you from
Yeah,
a research standpoint. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it'll do a lot of great things. It's just, again, I
Yeah,
think there's some things that are purely human,
I'm
and
with you, man.
that's,
Yeah.
maybe I'm
Uh,
old fashioned.
well, I think I got 20 years on you being old fashioned, but yeah, man, I'm with you. Do we have enough time to mention what you're doing for a distillery right now?
Yeah, sure. I can do that. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really excited. I still have a foot in the indie world, as much as I'm, like, predominantly at DC. But I'm doing two books for Distillery. One is the last issue of White Boat is going to come out soon. I'm just finishing it with Francesco. It'll take us a little bit longer, and then it's oversized. It's kind of our take on the island of Dr. Moreau. I'm really happy with it. And then I'm doing a new book with Jock called You Won't Feel a Thing for Distillery too. That's a straight up serial killer book, but it's pretty personal. It's about, like, it was sort of conceived last year when I was, like, in the Witches writers room and planning All In, and the writer strike had pushed All In on top of um on top of the All In planning. I've never worked as hard for that year. I felt like I never saw my kids, and I was, because the writers room was 9 to 5, and then I would get out of that and then plan Absolute Batman and all that stuff. And I feel it was really miserable. Not in terms, I loved every minute of the work, but I just felt like I missed everything with my kids and my wife. And I'm glad that that period is over. And so it's about a detective who kind of missed a lot of his personal life because he was committed to his work. And there's one case that's always eluded him, that nobody believes is real, but he believes that the person that kind of killed someone he knew growing up was a prolific serial killer and not just a drifter. And the point of the story when it begins is that he's now in his early 60s, and he's got a brain tumor, and it's caused this early onset dementia. So he went back to his hometown to sort of spend his days there in the local hospital. And there's a murder, and he comes to believe that this killer that's haunted him his whole life is here in town and someone he grew up with, and he's going to solve this case before he loses his grasp on reality and dies. And so it's very much about, like, the guy who believes that if he can just do this one last work thing, like the Batman story or the cartoon, the animated series, that like it will all make sense, like all the sacrifice, and it plays a lot with that idea. So it's a personal book, and it's heartfelt, but it's dark also, and it's born of that period where I'm like, oh, I'm working too hard and I need to go back to my family. So those books always have a lot of violence in them too, because it's always all the frustrations and anger of like not having having you know having time that you want to have. You take it out
Nuts.
on fictional characters.
That's good. That sounds great, man. Lego Master, I have two questions. One silly and one serious. The silly is, when is Absolute Jarro going to be introduced?
Jarro, yeah, that's like the
Jarro.
mini Starro that's in a jar. Yeah, from our
Oh.
Justice League.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
I hope they bring him back in the main universe. I always loved him. He was like my favorite little Robin. But he called Batman dad and everything. That was my favorite. Where he's like, out of my way, you know. Um, and the serious question is, what has been my favorite part about crafting the Absolute line? It's been the collaboration with the creators, like watching everybody just bring their A game. Honestly, I mean, there isn't one book in there that I wouldn't stand up as one of the best books we're publishing. I'm really proud of it, and that is wholly on the creative teams and the editorial and on editorial. They've all put them. I didn't like pitch them a take on the book. I was just like, "What's your take?" And everyone just really took a swing in a way that I'm so proud of. So it's like when we get together and we're like today we had the Zoom with all the Absolute writers, and it was just like, you know, it's joyful. I'm really excited to be with them because it's inspiring, and so it's being a part of a line that I'm just, inspired by.
That's cool. Oh, here's an interesting question from Harvey Picard's Ghost. He wants to know how you can wrestle with the fact that Distillery has big venture capitalist money behind it and is co-founded by a former HarperCollins bigwig and claim it's an indie.
Well, it doesn't claim. I don't know if they use the word indie. I mean, I think the way that Distillery presents itself, the thing that was exciting about Distillery to me is that is the first company where they offered us a stake in the company, as creators. So the idea really was like, they had investment from publishers overseas and this stuff too. And what they were going to do was do creator-owned books where we would own the rights to the books, but also have a stake in the company. And it was sort of like betting on each other in that way. And when I heard who was doing it, James Tynan and Becky Cloonan and Lisa Atula-Lote and Jock, I was like, I want to bet on them and I want them to bet on me. And the ethos of the company when they pitched it to us was really, high end production, really sort of beautiful printing, all of this. And for me, honestly, what it was it was just being in a company with my friends. It was getting to bet on my friends together. And I knew what the initial book, Somna and Gunn and some of the books coming out, and they sounded great to me. So that's really the idea. I mean, I understand if what you're saying is you think there's a conflict being called indie and having investment capital. I mean, I guess like I can understand that argument. But that said, like there's no one telling us we have to write one thing or another, or there's anything that's there's no directive about. We're not trying to make things like White Boat is almost like unfilmable. Like we're not trying to make things as IP, to be that. And again, like I think You Won't Feel a Thing would make a great movie or TV show, but it is also a rest home serial killer movie. So it's like, again, not the most like out of the
Marketable.
like out of the box marketable thing. So for us, it's really like being creatively free to do the things we want, and they have the benefit of them having investment and not being like Image, where I love doing books at Image, but at Image the book really does live or die on the sales of the book, and which is great. And again, I have plans to do more books. I want to do more books there. But every once in a while, it's nice to also try something different, where you're at a company where they have the money to guarantee that the artist will get paid for the entirety of the book, and you're not worried that if the book falls into the red, you're going to have to just go out of pocket in some way. So that's really the benefit of that, was like, I want to do a few books in a company where my friends are and that. So yeah, I didn't have a
Well,
big really problem with that.
and listen, Harvey, you're posting a lot here, and really, I appreciate when you come on and you contribute. But I really think that and forgive me, I don't mean to trivialize your bugaboo about it being called indie rather than a creator-owned company. It's semantics, and I do think there is a difference for people that are going through crowdfunding or putting out their own book with their own dime. I get that, and I think most of us get that. I don't see Distillery labeling themselves as an independent publisher, and I think when people do that, it's not done with any cruel intent. So I get what you're saying, but
I didn't see.
that's me.
I actually didn't see the chat until I didn't realize I could do that. So now I can see it.
Okay.
But again, like I understand if what you're saying is that the label indie shouldn't be applied. I don't ever remember me saying it's indie and that. Oh, I'm sorry. Like if I said indie, I'm using it broadly or generally, and you could be absolutely right to point that out. And I'm sorry if I made a mistake with the language of it. But I think of it as like it's not. I meant like it's a company where we own our properties. It's creator owned, is what I meant. So
I get it, and I think, and honestly, Harvey, I think you know where Scott is now coming from. I'm sorry that it offended you that he used the word independent. You've made your point, so we're going to move
totally.
on.
Apologies,
and that's that. No, and that good. Yeah, feel free, finish your apology. That's okay.
No, that's. I mean, like again, I understand that people are sensitive, and I also understand it's a tough market right now.
Very much so.
Creator owned, for indies, like in all kinds of ways. And incredible kudos to people that are doing absolutely independent publishing and all that kind of stuff too. So, again, like I just feel like across the board, I'm really excited to support and go out there and promote comics all across. Like I think that I've been a part of a lot of different kinds of companies, and I've enjoyed. It's part of what excites me is trying different challenges with it. And right now, like seeing places that are absolutely taking huge risks publishing across the board, and then bigger companies that do license stuff taking risks and doing things, like I just think it's a good moment all around, even though it's a rough market. So yeah, you know what I mean.
King in New York wants to know if you ever think you would do an Enerjohn or Enerjohn, what Kirkman is doing over at Skybound right now.
I love Robert. Robert's a friend, and absolutely, like, and Josh obviously is one of my best friends, and he's like key to that whole universe, and Kelly obviously too. So I mean, like, I would do that in a second. I also love what Skybound is doing with the Universal Monsters. That's something I'm bummed I missed out on because I was doing stuff over here. So I'm 1,000% into what I think what Enerjohn is doing is fantastic. And again, I was giving this speech. I was doing this thing I did a lot of talks with retailers, and when we were launching All In at different cons and things like that. I did like a New York Comic Con keynote, and did at San Diego, did the retailer dinner for Lunar and that stuff and all that. And one of the things I'd love to dispel, at least in my opinion, is that for me that there isn't like I don't feel a huge like you're either in this side of things or you're that side of things, where you're big two or you're indie, or you're creator owned, or you're indie, or this. Like absolutely there are different lanes that you drive in. Absolutely every area is vibrant and important. But for me it really is like the exciting thing about the success of something like the Enerjohn universe is it brings more people into the stores, and that helps direct them in a good store towards creator owned, towards indie, towards riskier, different books, and that's the fun. And so for me, like doing those talks, it was never like DC only, don't buy Marvel, don't buy this. I was always mentioning Marvel, always mentioning Enerjohn, always mentioning Books at Image and elsewhere, because for me it's like it's all connected as one ecosystem, and a healthy DC and Marvel aren't the detriment of creator owner indie publishing, but help get people in the door for all those things. And again, like I'm never leaving doing creator owned or indie stuff on the side in my own way. I never want to just be doing big two, but maybe I'm wrong, but my belief is one helps the other in a lot of ways. So I think that this moment in particular, there's an interconnectedness where a rising tide really lifts all boats.
I agree with you on all that. So are your creator-owned things, are they still under the Best Jacket imprint?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So what that
What's happening
allows
with
me to
Best Jacket?
do, it allows me so that it allows me essentially to having an imprint allows me to negotiate with those companies as a business. So I have like my way of being able to have, argue differently for the rights, argue differently for reversion of the book to me if it goes out of print in different ways. So I really enjoy that.
That's cool. Mateo says, hey, I've seen the Absolute trade solicits. They're following the DC All-In designs for the covers, which made me think, is Absolute its own thing or part of All-In? Sorry if this was talked about before. It wasn't.
Well, they're Absolute. All-In is the big initiative that Absolute is a part of. All-In is sort of like a moment at DC. Like we're going to stop using the branding at some point on the main books, in this year. But the idea is that All-In was the big initiative, and then Absolute was a part of that. But Absolute is its own universe, and the main universe is over here. So it'll have its own, it'll always be its own kind of imprint in and of itself.
Excellent, man. Let's see here if there's anything else that I've missed. I don't think so. I think we're good. Wait, because people want to know any other Black Label books coming from Scott. Maybe the Nightwing story you mentioned.
Oh yeah! Oh my God! It was called Parabola. I had a whole.
I remember.
There's so
we
many
talked about it, man.
Yeah, I would love to do that one day. I think what happened with that was just that it wasn't the tone of it wasn't that different than what Tom Taylor was doing on Nightwing, and he came in and just knocked it out of the park. So it was sort of like, I wanted to rethink it so it didn't feel redundant.
Sure.
I never like, I don't know. I'm sensitive to that stuff too about not wanting to do a book that's unneeded at any time too. So sometimes I'll shelve ideas if it feels like there's other stuff that is hitting that note for people right then, and figure out a different way to do it. So that's where that went. But
okay.
I'd love to do Black Label. I'd love to do a book at Vertigo, honestly, now that it's back. So that's where I got my start. And Chris,
Absolutely,
who runs it, is a dear friend. He goes back to New York with me for 15 years. So
who's running it now? Who's running Vertigo now?
Chris Conroy.
Oh, great. Excellent, man. That's fantastic. Yeah. King wants to know, is your Cap story one you've mentioned years ago about Cap's time in the iceberg?
That's where it starts. It's evolved since then, but that is the seed of it. Yeah.
Interesting. Huh? That's cool. I like it. Have you taken the kids to Captain America: Brave New World? And I mean, we mentioned Superman. Are you psyched for what's coming? Like
I'd love to see it.
And,
yeah.
I'm
always psyched for. Yeah, I mean, I'm super psyched for Fantastic Four. I'm really excited for Superman. Again, we got a glimpse of it, and it looked awesome. I'm excited for Thunderbolts. I mean, I like to go see everything. I'm more of a big tent movie guy, or a small. So the kind of middle areas, like I usually, I see so few movies because I'm just have 3 kids and busy and all that, and they're all different ages and want to do all kinds of stuff. So I'll probably, my guess is like I'll definitely see Superman, definitely see Fantastic Four, and then probably if see other things on streaming. Yeah. Just I like only see a few movies a year, really. So
Scott, truly, and I don't have kids as my excuse, but I used to be a guy that would go at least once a month to the movies. I was embarrassed. I was at an Oscar party Sunday, and I'm like, I haven't seen anything. And
it's gotten worse. I know it's just having a little, Quinn was a bit of a surprise. Like we have 18, almost 14, and then 5.
Yeah.
And so the 5-year-old was like, comet out of nowhere. And he's just like, he's amazing, but he's also like, it stretches it. So it's like these kids I could go see,
sure,
that with, but this kid, no. So it sort of, it throws a monkey wrench in.
Have you started your superhero ABCs though with him in terms of age appropriate stuff?
He likes to tell Batman stories at night. He's very into the idea that I work with Batman. It's still a little confusing to him, but yeah.
That's fantastic, man. this is interesting. And really, we can wrap up, Scott. If I don't mean to keep
Sure.
you, but
No,
I
yeah,
know.
I should go soon just to get to bed.
Yeah,
but,
well, and it's late your time. Absolutely, man. I know that some writers and artists nerd out about the paper that their comics are printed on. Is there anything about the comics production process you're really into? And I'll just add this on top of that, Scott, and say I miss newsrag, that comics printed on newsrag. I appreciate that the better quality paper is better for the art. But I remember I would tell Brubaker and Rucka when Gotham Central was happening, I'm like, I'm glad it's on newsrag because it's a pulp story.
Reading it that way.
Yeah,
it's a news. It's
a police pulp story. It should be on pulp paper. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and again, like the paper itself isn't something that I'm like super tuned into, except when Greg had a paper that he drew on that he was very Capullo, yeah, and that I remember he would show me the difference in the grain, and it was awesome. He'd be like, "Look at the way my pen goes on this. Look at the way the pen goes on that." But in terms of the process, if there's a zone that I really nerd out on, it's with like right now, for example, with Nick, like when the art comes back from the script, and we like Nick and I again, we collaborate a lot while he's here, so it's not like I write a script and hand it to him. We go over it and we talk a lot, and then that. But when the art comes back as a PDF, and then I look at the script again and get to change it based on all the amazing things that have happened in the storytelling visually that I realized would be redundant if I put them in the script now. So that like it gives this whole new life where it's like instead of now doing the dialogue I thought I needed to do, Nick expressed that in the acting. So I can actually do something that's more subliminal or subtle, and they can be talking about things that aren't as obvious, or I can do narration that really contrasts with what you're seeing because what you're seeing is so clear emotionally here that it gives me. And so that phase, you have about a week between when the art comes in and then you have like the script needs to really be finalized for lettering. And that week is like my geek out zone when I get to really work it and go over it before handing it to the letterer.
That's cool. All right, last question. King of New York. A lot of the absolute side characters look like characters from the main universe. Alfred looks like Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul. Thomas looks like Alfred. Were those meant to be misdirections, or is there more there?
No, I mean, I think it was really Alfred was meant to look like Nick based him on sort of a guy he knew, where he wanted it to look like really weathered and the kind of person that's seen everything and is very haunted. So he drew these kind of bearded, spooky, I love it, like white in the thing. So it really came from that. And Thomas is meant more to have that teacherly feel. And again, he and Martha, you'll see pictures of them in issue 6 where they had long hair and they were total hippies back in their 20s. So they have their own thing, but the designs are meant to speak to the core versions of them, but really kind of just I think if they were placed in a tougher circumstance here and grew differently, but had to be even more themselves. So that's the idea. Like Bruce is still Bruce, but he's just like he's got bigger, And
okay.
So that's kind of the way to do it.
All right, 2 nerd questions. I'm going to build on what Harvey asked you here. What's your favorite Bogart film? And then I've got an Elvis question for you.
Oh, sure. Well, my parents' first date was Casablanca, so literally,
nice.
like, yeah, they have things all over the house in their apartment that I grew up in from that. So I'd have to say that because otherwise I wouldn't be here.
Scott, I don't know if Eddie Muller, the noir host at Turner Classic Movies, he has.
I know who he is. Yeah.
Okay, he brings his noir film festival from city to city, and he's actually been on Word Balloon a couple times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know about you and your wife and everything, but truly, growing up even in the '80s and having the ability to see, like your parents likely did, old movies on the big screen, that was so great. And
oh yeah,
really,
we used to go to the $5 movie theater over in Murray Hill on the west side in the 30s, and they had it was $2 movies back then. You'd go and it was all old movies.
All revivals, yeah, that's great.
Revivals, it was $2, yeah.
That's excellent. And then Elvis wise, did you?
Elvira was my favorite. I see that, and I love. She seems like such an awesome person all around. But I was a huge Elvira fan.
Did she pass? Did Cassandra pass away?
No, she's here. No, she's
I was
going
to say, when she said I miss Elvira, I'm like, wait a minute.
I miss her as Elvira doing all kinds of stuff as Elvira.
Well, my guy is Svengoolie, and once again, I keep promoting it because we're doing our panel again at C2E2, and nothing delights me more is to sit down with my favorite horror host and talk about old movies with him and stuff. Because even beyond the horror genre, he knows his old stuff. But regarding, wait a minute, let's see. All right, let's see here. There's at least about 220 Bogart films, so would qualify as the right answer to that. And
thanks.
Oh yeah,
Maltese Falcon also is like a big influence. Maltese Falcon is one of my favorites.
Sure, absolutely, and again, a ton of great Bogart. Big Sleep is awesome. Even though nobody, I
know it doesn't make sense, but I love it.
That's what I was going to say. Exactly, man. But it's cool. I mean, it's still atmospherically, it's just so great. He's amazing. No, Bogart's the man. Did you see
the Elvis question? Oh, go ahead.
No, and real fast before I get away from Sam Spade and Bogart, did you see Clive Owen play Sam Spade in that streaming series?
I missed it. Oh, in
Monsieur Spade,
I missed
in
it,
France.
Yeah,
it's on Netflix. It's great. It's great, and it blew my mind because he channeled his own Sam Spade. I'm like, those are big shoes to fill, man. And he meant,
dude.
I love.
Was one of my favorites of the last.
Absolutely, but the Netflix Elvis documentary, they're focused on the '68 comeback special and everything. Did you see that?
Oh yeah, wait. The I've seen in like the '68 special. I've seen so many things about it.
Sure.
So I'm trying to remember. That's like my favorite. The '68 to '70 is like my favorite. That Sun Sessions and then that is like those are my two favorite.
Oh yeah.
So I listened to all those, like Elvis back in Memphis, Elvis in Memphis, like all that whole period, and the special itself, like a lot. So, that I'm not sure if I saw the one. I probably did.
It's on Netflix. It's on Netflix. Conan O'Brien is one of the talking heads. Steve Bender, who I think is still with us and in his 90s. As produced the comeback special.
I met him at Elvis Week forever ago with Scotty Moore.
Wow.
With him. Yeah, back in the 90s. I was like, I started going there when I was like, 16, I guess, with my good friend Scott, 16, 17, somewhere around there. And so back in those days, there was no Elvis Presley Enterprises, and it was much more sort of a circus at Elvis Week, and it was like much more unlicensed. It was all kinds of crazy stuff.
Grassroots, yeah, man.
A lot of velvet Elvises, a lot of amazing impersonator, Elvis or Selvis.
Yes.
I have all these pictures. It was amazing. But they it was amazing really to get to meet some of those people before they passed. Yeah, Scotty Moore and them, and Sam Phillips would go down when the parade on the car with the wig and the whole thing.
Sure. Like, I blew it, man, and it was just technology conspired against me. I had Steve Bender on a phone interview with him like 10 years ago, and it didn't take. And I went to the PR person and I'm like, can I get him back? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, thanks a lot. And because not only did we talk about the comeback special, but he directed the Star Wars holiday special.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
So I mean, the guy, amazing career, and unfortunately, I the stories he told me will live in my memory. But it was great meeting Steve Bender and everything, and how important that special was to make Elvis relevant again.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. I have a bunch of different takes of it. I have like my when I was I was teaching I taught high school before I broke into comics, and I remember my boss was like, oh, I like Elvis, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll bring in my CDs. This is like before streaming, you're talking about like 2000,
sure,
2001. And so I brought in a book. I still have it. I'll show it to you if you want. It's like this big book of CDs, and I open it and it's all Elvis. It's like bootlegs and all kinds. Because they used to have all these amazing like bootlegs from concerts, but also it was like outtakes where he would like, it was him behind the scenes and him just playing with his band and whatever. And so he was like looking through it, and I could see his face where I had made a bad move here where it was like way overkill, and he thought it was like red rum, and I was like, but I was like, okay, take it back. He's like not that big a fan, but I still have it. I'll show it to you, like all the CDs. I have it all now digitally, but like
that's outstanding.
I'm very proud of it. Yeah, I used to go to There was the Wilson World Hotel before it became the Heartbreak Hotel, and they would have different bootleg people would have like the CDs set up, and it was awesome.
I
Tapes.
love finding these studio sessions before they start recording and just Elvis fucking around. Or
Yeah,
my
exactly.
and my favorite movie beyond the listen in
That's the
a
way
lot
it
of
is.
yes, god damn it,
I
yes,
knew you
man.
were gonna say that. See, look at that.
Come on, man. Elvis in the session, doing the sessions, and
Riding the
oh,
bicycle and all that stuff. That's like my favorite. Yeah, in that shirt. That's it. All the he
that's
just looks
it was that
super cool.
movie. It was that movie, and honestly, the scene in Help where the Beatles are singing "You're Gonna Lose That Girl" and they're in the studio recording the song. That's why I got into broadcasting, man. I'm like, I didn't want to be a musician. I wanted to be one of those guys in the control room and everything. I'm like, that is cool. How do I do that? So I got to do
Yep.
that for 30 years. So it worked
Yeah,
out.
I got to that was that yeah, that movie had a huge impact on me. So
I get it,
yeah, and
man.
I've been there and Tupelo and International Hotel
I
before
was gonna
whatever,
say
all of it. Yeah.
the Vegas Hilton and everything.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the Vegas Hilton. They still have a cape. But they did a couple of years ago, but that was about it.
Well, I
So
used to go there in the 90s and the early 2000s when they had the Star Trek experience ride.
oh
And
yeah.
so I would go to pay homage to the king, but also I'm like there for Captain Kirk, man. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah.
Well, it's funny because the reason I got into them, and then I'll leave you alone, is like
It's
it
all
was
good,
interesting
buddy.
'cause I was a teenager, and I was like I was at this I was really like didn't I was in New York City in high school, and I like didn't I was trying to figure myself out and was like very like socially awkward, and I was like, you know what, I just want to like something that nobody else would like in New York City at this time, and I was like, Elvis. No one likes Elvis. And so it just became this thing that I was like, I'm going to like this even if I don't. And then the irony was like I picked up the early stuff, the Sun Sessions and this, and it had this incredible effect on me where I was like, first of all the different kinds of indigenous music just like blending together, not just through him, but like it got me into all these different things that were happening at that moment, blues
Yes,
and country and folk and all that sort of that mix in all through the South of different artists from Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and Johnny Cash and all of that. And then it got me into the earlier stuff, the Jimmy Rogers and Woody
attaboy.
Guthrie and all of that kind of stuff, Lead Belly.
Yeah.
And but anyway, like Elvis, the thing was I was like, this is this kid that was my age in the Sun Sessions, 16, 17, 18, and was like going to school where he had nothing going for him. He was like poor, he had acne, he was like, and he still went there dressed like he was a rock star already. He goes to school in like pink shirts and pants, and like he acts like, and that gave me the confidence. I was like, this guy is awesome. Like I want to have that confidence when I'm 17. And then you listening to the confidence in his voice at that age, and you're just like, I want to do that and do something different and new in this. And so it became like a genuine thing, and then there's kind of an Elvis for every stage of your life, where the Vegas stuff and the '60s movies and the camp of a lot of it. So, and I got into all of it, but that was my way in, and it is a sort of a special, sincere fandom for me. You know,
I share that with you, and also the as you said, the various influences that were happening back then. Jason Aaron, I used to tease him because I'm like, dude, I don't know if I'll ever get into country music. And then that Ken Burns documentary came out,
oh
and
yeah,
and it really made me reappreciate the roots of country music, but also how tied radio was. And
oh sure,
I'm a 35 years broadcaster, so I'm a big broadcast nerd, and learning and really putting the pieces together of like, oh yeah, that's right. Country music and popular music really grew up with radio
yeah,
and
and it
and
was
how
also
important it was.
and it was populist. It was interesting because it was dangerous and different, and it was
Oh
all
yeah.
these things, all these things, music being, from the Alan Lomax, to him going down recording people and all that stuff, to,
Yes.
the songs about. To me, it's fascinating. Always want to do a story about that, actually, like a horror story, but
Well,
about early recordings, but the
sure.
traveling around trying to record people,
Oh,
but
like
the
Alan Lomax's stuff. That's cool.
yeah,
Because
I
I
have those recordings too. The Alan Lomax special
Oh, sure.
collection
Yeah, no, that's an incredible,
with
absolutely
the
mine. And
Bristol
again,
sessions, and then the Carter family and all that kind of stuff too. But
yes.
that whole period of like, the early sort of recordings in the 19 teens all the way through, the 50s and the 60s for me, and that where you're seeing all these different sounds that are so American come together in different ways and make new things, and just that is fascinating to me. And yeah, Elvis was the gateway for a lot of that for me. So
See, and for me, it would be Lefty Frizzell and Hank
oh
Williams,
yeah,
but like and set them in the 40s and have them in the great cowboy band outfits and stuff. But basically, yeah, going on those interstates and stuff and fighting werewolves and vampires and stuff.
oh sure. Look, I'm a big fan. I'm a huge Hank Williams fan and all those guys. So we tried to put some of it in American Vampire too. There's a guy who wears who's kind of based a little bit on the Porter Wagner, like the nudie suit thing, whose suit has he's actually like things hidden in the design of a suit that's telling the people that hunt monsters whether it's safe or not because of the way the suit is sewn. And there's a lot of that, like Grand Ole Opry stuff in there.
That's outstanding. That's hilarious. Dude, always a pleasure. You're killing it. And
it's great, man. I love talking to you. And again, I thank you to everybody out there who asked anything and is part of the, all of it and all that stuff too. So, I hope we get to do it again soon.
I will say that everyone will be very pleased if you've enjoyed the first 5 issues of Absolute Batman. Good things are coming. I'll just leave it.
I promise. The series, I really feel like we hit our groove working together. Where I'm really, really confident about and again, Marcos Martin, I feel so lucky to have the artists on the book that we get to work with, between Gabriel Walta on 4 and this. We're trying to keep it really, just really, surprising in a lot of ways that way too. So can't wait for you to see it.
Can't wait. Just a couple of weeks away, everybody, and you will all have Absolute Batman 6. Very cool. Please come back sooner than later. I mean, sometimes we wait over a year, since we talked.
No.
But no. Hey, listen, man. You got 3 kids. You're juggling a lot. I totally understand. But yeah, we'll expect me to bug you sooner than later in the months to come.
Anytime, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott. Take care. Scott Snyder, everybody. Thank you very much. And guess what? I'm going to be back in about 45 minutes here on Word Balloon. And it'll be a scene missing. We're going to be talking more about Gene Hackman. And we're going to give, because I did my thing last Thursday, and I didn't want to wait because I felt so bad about Gene passing. We didn't have a chance to really go over it with my usual scene missing partners, Jeff Parker and Ian Brill and Gabe Hardman. Well, they're all coming on with me in about 45 minutes at the bottom of the next hour. And that is to talk not only about our favorite Hackman movies, but some hidden Hackman gems that you can find on YouTube that you may not be aware of. So that's coming up in about 45 minutes. So that's 12:30 Eastern Time, 11:30 Central Time, 9:30 Western Time. Until the next time, which is just 45 minutes away, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.